You're watching Leafs Morning Take with host Nick Alberga and former NHLer Jay Rosehill. The show starts now.
And away we go for the Thursday edition of Leafs Morning Take presented by Bet365. It is Nick Alberga and Dave Pagnotta with you on this Thursday. What's going on, DP?
How you doing, buddy? Nice little morning after.
Yeah, we're doing well. We're going to change your mic, so we're going to get that fired up. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets, whatever the moment. It's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code NATION, all in uppercase today. That's NATION, N-A-T-I-O-N. Our Super Chat charity partner this season is Sick Kids. Want to make sure that your question or comment gets on the show. Hit us up with a Super Chat. Proceeds from our Super Chat will go to Sick Kids, ranked the #1 research-intensive children's hospital in Canada and 3rd in the world. It is very dry today. Like, it's got that dry feeling in my condo. It's cold outside. Just a weird time of year. And it was obviously very cold in Scotiabank Arena last night, Dave.
Yeah, for the Leafs. That's for sure. Second period on was just rough. That was not pleasant. I mean, Columbus liked it, and half of Woodbridge did too. So that was that was a plus.
I thought that was the best part of that game. So, like, Columbus scores a couple goals. Obviously, it's like the hometown guys, Adam Fantilli, Hattie, Luca Del Bel Baluz, who played for Mississauga. You can hear their families celebrating when they score. Just a picture of how quiet that arena can be sometimes, most times, quite frankly. And Austin Matthews actually called it out, which I like.
Yeah. After the fight, expected the crowd to react and get back into it, and they never really did. So they never really did anything. But it was just it was a weird crowd. But like what Fantilli had 70 family and friends members of his family and friends that were in attendance. Del Bel Baluz had a bunch as well. I walked the concourse during the second intermission. It looked like I was at a family reunion. It was there was a lot of a lot of Italian based individuals running around the rink, and they got the show that they wanted because their boys showed up, and the Leafs not so much.
Yeah, definitely. And excuse me. And as soon as that Monday game hit against Tampa and we started to get set for this Columbus one, it had an odor comparable to downtown Toronto on like a Sunday night when just the sewage is leaking. It's just a rancid smell. And we titled yesterday's show Trap Game for a reason, and it had all that feel going into the game and during the game. And then Elvis Merzlikins stands on his head. Like something was off yesterday, it felt.
Yeah, it's not like when the game started they were playing like crap. Like they were doing okay. They were in it. They just weren't getting the bounces. They were creating chances. They controlled a lot of the pace of play, at least in the first bit of the game. And then a bounce for Columbus. You get those 2 goals. I can't remember who got the first of the 2, but Fantilli got a second of the game right before him with somebody else, and that kind of that was it. Like there was no coming back from that, which we've seen in the past, and obviously like the Habs game, Saturday you're down 3-0 and you come back and you pull it off you score 7 unanswered, and you're good to go. This one was just there was no response, and a hell of a fight, amazing tilt between Reeves and Olivier. That was incredible, but nothing happened after that. There was no response after that. And JVR, former Leaf, getting the second goal. I mean, which you kind of expected him to come back. And it's been a little while, but still, he always likes to get a little, as you say, revenge here. But he scores. Fantilli pops one in about a minute later, and that was it. Like the Leafs had no response from it. Nylander had a breakaway. A couple solid chances, wasn't able to bury, wasn't able to finish, and that was really all that they could muster as the second half of the game went on.
That's always the formula when the opposition comes in at Scotiabank Arena, local kids, former player, and boom goes the dynamite, as they say. But yeah, just that type of night for the Leafs. But I will say I wasn't like entirely disappointed with their effort. Like I thought they brought it. I
Yeah.
thought in the first half of the game, they were actually particularly good. But I think the silver lining, we actually got a Ryan Reeves fight, and we got like a heavyweight tilt. Ryan Reeves, Matthew Olivier, and a lot of people surprised, I think, to find out that was the first ever bout between those two in their careers, and it was a damn good
Yeah.
one, Dave.
It was phenomenal. It was one of the fights of the year. Like when they lined up against each other and they were kind of feeling each other out, who was going to get the first, who was going to grab first, come in first. I was like, oh, this is going to be fantastic. And I sit in the press box. I sit right next to a bunch of the visiting scouts and other management guys that are there. And I mean, every single one of those guys, former NHL players and executives, were like, "Holy shit, that was a tilt. That was a fantastic scrap." And you can see it there, like they like just boom, boom, just shot for shot, just going back at it. And then at this point, they're like, "All right, I think we need to catch our breath. Good job, little tap, love tap, good for you." That was fantastic.
I
And
could only,
you
yeah.
thought that would like get the crowd going a little bit and pump everybody up, and especially on like next gen night. And nothing.
It was very sleepy, right? And I always
Yeah.
make this show because I sit beside you at the games most nights, and
Yep.
just the hum in the crowd, like it's a library or like a viewing when somebody passes away. And again, we've had this conversation so many times in this podcast. There's no need, delving back into it, but it's just so quiet. And again, I mentioned it, like Austin Matthews commented on that. Like he's so right. Like you get a spirited scrap, two legitimate heavyweights, and you
Yeah.
can't get up as a crowd to make some noise for both guys. I think is very telling about this team and that market specifically, and the fact that they just can't get their crowd going sometimes. It's bizarre.
Yeah, it's a combo of things, right? Like the crowd itself, we all know, everybody knows how it is for the most part. But again, especially last night, next gen night, you're supposed to have a bunch of kids there, get everybody all hyped up. There was no energy. And at the same time, in all honesty, and I know some of the people in game ops, and I'm sorry, I tell them this all the time. You guys got to up your game too. Like there's kind of like the same stuff year after year after year after year. It's taken a while for them to make any adjustments. They've made some, but it's still not the like rah hoopla, get everybody pumped up kind of vibe in that rink. Maybe that's a contributing factor. I don't friggin' know, but like that they gotta fix something in that department as well.
Unequivocally, I couldn't agree more. I think game operations needs a complete overhaul from like the same songs every game. Like it's unbelievable that you just know exactly in the course of the game which song is going to play. It's just very, very predictable. On top of that, like they have to find a way to just reshuffle things and try to
Yeah,
find a way to ignite the crowd a bit, because obviously what's been happening, I mean, not to place blame on anybody. I think there's a lot of reasons and a variety of reasons as to why the crowd can't get going. But again, you get a spirited tilt like that, Reeves and Olivier, and I like the fact that Austin Matthews pointed it out. So naturally, Jay Rosehill, the first fight of the season for Ryan Reeves, and he's not available for today's show. But luckily, I tracked him down last night, Dave, and we got his thoughts available right now at the Leafs Nation 401 on YouTube. But I thought it'd be a good idea to play it on the show. So here's Jay Rosehill talking about the Ryan Reeves Matthew Olivier fight.
Hey folks, just got in for some family time on the ski hill, and what do I see but Revo getting in his first dust up of the season, and against no other than Matthew Olivier. I like this Olivier kid. I like the way he handles his business. I like the way he handles himself and goes about the job that he does. There's not a lot of them left, but he is one guy on the top of my list. Great way for Revo to get his first one under his belt, and they waste no time. Shed the mitts, slow, big old square off. Both of them jostling for position. Revo loses his balance. Now, if this was back in the day when there's, you're getting 25, 30 fights in a season, and the same guy you probably square off against 5 or 6 times, you might let that guy up and help him, but you got to get your cookies when you can this day and age. And there was no holding back from Olivier when Revo lost his balance. Revo regains himself, the wily veteran he is, and they go to town. Old school, super heavies, chucking them back and forth. Unreal to watch. And, near the end, are a lot of those landing? No, which is kind of something that the naysayers of fighting don't really understand. Like every time you bare knuckle fight, it's not like, guys are getting KO'd left, right, and center. I know a lot more injuries come from body checks than they do scraps, especially two wily guys like this who know exactly what they're doing, know how to protect themselves. They got good grabs, but Lord, are they unloading. I loved it. And, you don't see these all the time. You don't see them anymore. We have decided to not listen to the players or the fans. We listen to, let's listen to the journalists with their Berkeley degrees who go up with their pencils and their typewriters and they say, this is too dangerous. I can't have it. We can't stand for it. We need to get rid of it. And man, they did a good job. In the last 10 years, fighting's been crushed, and you don't see it that often. And there's all kinds of other things that come into place, as we have seen. But when two wily veterans like this guy, especially Revo, man, like he's been in the league for like 16 years. Geez, I can't say how tough that is to do this day and age, to stay in the league, continue doing this job. It's why I've given him such a pass for not getting in a scrap until, late January. He's earned it. Let him do what he wants to do out there. But man, him and Olivier, what a great scrap out there. We love to see it. Keep them coming.
There you have it, Jay Rosehill from his casting couch. I like that. I called that out as soon as he sent that to me. I'm like, yeah, from your couch, right? Great call. But a great breakdown. Again, that's the first person, Dave, I wanted to hear from when I saw Ryan Reeves scrap Matthew Olivier was Jay Rosehill. So a job well done, Rosie.
Yeah. Hey, great to get that perspective. I didn't play in the NHL. I wasn't dropping the mitts. It was bad enough just doing it on the street if you had to, or in the friggin', at the whatever. Anyway, the rink. But no, it's good. Like that should have, in all honesty, like that's the kind of tilt that should get the crowd going just in general. Like that was one of the best fights we've seen in a long time, and nothing.
Yeah,
I get where Austin's coming from.
Yeah, Niente in Italian, of course. But regardless, there will be some noise in Music City. That is for sure. Thursday, March 20th, Sunday, March 23rd. First ever TLN Nation vacation. I'm going to be there. Pagnotta's going to be there. Rosie, Vic, Zach Phillips, Carter Hutton. It's going to be an unbelievable time. Live podcast, winery tour. We're going to take in the Toronto-Nashville game at Bridgestone on the Saturday night. We're offering two packages, one with flights, $24.50 plus tax, one without, $12.99 plus tax. Hotel rooms are double occupancy. For more information on how to book, head on over to nationgear.ca. That's nationgear.ca, or check out the link in our show bio. Life's too short for ordinary vacations. AK writes in, casting couch. Lol, that's not a good reference. Yeah, it is. It's phenomenal.
That was a pretty funny reference.
I thought it was great. I thought it was pretty accurate, Rosie, from his casting couch. Nevertheless, tough transition. Ray Ferraro, the great Ray Ferraro, is coming up in 15 minutes from now. I'm sure he's going to have a couple takes on this Leafs team.
Oh, yeah. He should. He's called a few of their games anyway, over the years. So let's get a good idea of how he views it, especially a player of his caliber when he played. To analysts now, and one of the best color guys out there. That I'm interested to hear what he's got to say about this group in general, but then just whatever the hell performance that was last night.
It's funny because you lose that game, but not a lot of negativity coming compared to other games for this Maple Leafs team. But at the Leafs Nation 401 on YouTube right now, if you're stopping by as well, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Again, at the Leafs Nation 401, Leafs Morning Take, wherever you find your podcast. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review. Also, don't forget to check out the LeafsNation.com. So Columbus 5, Toronto 1. For some reason, Columbus just has Toronto's number. Now 0-2 against the Jackets this season. They've been outscored 11-3. Maybe don't start Dennis Hildeby against Columbus next time. I didn't think he was particularly great in this game. To pile up on Hildeby and blame him for the loss, probably not. Merzlikins was good. I thought the Leafs were in the game for the first half. They showed up. That's why I'm not royally pissed today. They actually showed up for that game. You were in attendance for it, of course.
Yeah, it wasn't again, it's not like they just came out flat right out of the gate. They were fine in the first, honestly, just in that first period. But for whatever reason, the bounces, as I said earlier, the bounces went Columbus's way. This wasn't your typical trap game in a sense where they just didn't show up right at puck drop. Like they were in it. They had their chances. First period was like decent in terms of performance, and then again the quick bounces Columbus's way. You get JVR on the board, you get Fantilli scoring, right after in the middle of that second period, and that's just kind of when just everything fell off the reins for this group. Like it wasn't a big, um, again, they weren't crap right away. Like they were decent, and then it just after those two, there was just no response from them. Like that's the problem that I kind of had with that game. And I get, maybe everyone's kind of a little bit, their reaction's a little tame um, because of it. But I don't know. I didn't like the response or the lack of response really from that group after those two goals. Like they just kind of seemed like, fuck, all right, let's get ready for the next one.
Yeah, they seemed a bit defeated. It was 1-0, then the 2-0 goal goes in, and like it felt like the game really changed because there's a big chunk, excuse me, of that second period where it was all Maple Leafs. And granted, everything
Yeah,
was to the perimeter. The power play was okay. Like they were snapping it around a bit, but it was very perimeter. I think you have to give
yeah,
some props to the Columbus Blue Jackets first and foremost. And again, the goaltending was really good. Like I think sometimes you're just gonna have those nights where you just can't solve the opposition. Like I was stunned they're able to put one past Merzlikins. Like he was that good. But you're so right. Like in the second half of the game, it's like the Leafs faded into the night, and I think they just realized it's not going to be our night. But to your point, I will say they did start on time. I thought it was a good start. Again, Dennis Hildeby is a bit bewildering. I'm tempering expectation. Like he's still young, and
yeah.
just his size alone makes me optimistic for his future. But I will say he's a 6'7" guy who plays like he's 5'7". So if they can figure out how to utilize or for him to utilize and deploy his size correctly, I think he's got a bright future. But it's been a turbulent start this year for him.
Yeah, and give it some time. Like Wall, same situation
Yep.
to a certain extent. Like it took him a little bit of time before he got to the NHL level, like consistently anyway. It took him some time in the A to get acclimated and to get his game going. This goes back to back in the day where it took you know defensemen and goaltenders a little bit of time to kind of get going here before they started to find their groove in the National Hockey League. Give him a little bit of time as well.
Definitely. And I thought a funny moment as well from that game. And I hope this was just sarcasm, but the whole Merzlikins Matthews stick thing where I think it was the second time in the last week. I forget what game I was watching over the weekend, but the goalie took the player's stick, and it happened again as Merzlikins takes Matthews' stick. And I don't blame him. 69 tucks last year. But Matthews took Merzlikins' stick, and he couldn't be serious that he was going to play with the goalie stick, right? Like this is a guy who's played hockey his entire life, and he didn't know that rule. But he made the comment after the game, "I got to read the rule book." I get like he knew the rule, right? Like everybody knows that rule that you can't play with the goalie stick, right? Or am I crazy?
He made brain fart. I don't know. Like, was it that type of situation? It was funny, but and then it took like 45 minutes for the refs to figure out who's getting a friggin' penalty.
Yeah, yeah. Because it happened over the weekend, and the goalie didn't get a holding the stick penalty, but like that is that is blatantly a holding the stick penalty. I thought that whole
Well, yeah.
sequence was very interesting. And if you're a player and you don't think you're not allowed or you're allowed to use a goalie stick, I mean, you better brush up on the rules. But imagine Matthews with that type of shaft, man. I think he'd score 89 goals.
He- He'd take out the glass behind
Yeah.
the net a few times too with that friggin' thing. Can you imagine?
Ever
Just
seen
no one would want to sit behind the net.
Yeah, probably not. I remember Russ Tyler taking a knuckle puck with the goalie stick in Mighty Ducks. I think it was D2 where he takes his helmet off during play and scores the goal. Not to compare this to the Maple Leafs and Austin Matthews, but he's on fire. I think that's a big positive. I'd grab a 5-game goal streak, 9 goals in the last 10 games since returning. His ninth
Yeah, forget
straight.
about the -3 though.
Yeah, I don't really pay attention to that because we can talk about Lane Hudson's -5 on Saturday, right? But we didn't. We steered clear of that. But you're right.
Yeah.
It was just again, I think a lot of credit to Columbus in this game. I rarely do that if you guys know on this show, but Adam Fantilli had some hop in his step, 3 goals from Nobleton. Luca Delbel Baluz had a goal and assist from Woodbridge. And you talked about it. James Van Riemsdyk, goals in back-to-back games now against the Leafs, has 8 and 26 outings against Toronto. And And that's your formula to success. They got the goaltending, they got the timeliness, they got some big saves like that. That's another story. We talked about Hildeby. The Leafs couldn't get that save at the right time because it was a close game midway through.
I didn't get a chance to go to Columbus's room after the game, but I was really curious if the guys got a nice, like, home cooked, spaghetti and meatballs or chicken parm or whatever. Nice little plate of lasagna, homemade lasagna right out of the gate. That might have fueled them up a little bit, for that one. But you're right. Like, Columbus played a solid game, and this is a team that, they've surprised a lot of people. They're in the first wild card spot right now as they kind of leapfrog over the Canadians and the Sens. They're a point up on both of those. They're a point up on Boston. That's continuing to slip. Like, they're a competitive team, and they're going to change, their course a little bit ahead of the trade deadline. I don't think they're going to be overly eager to get rid of guys like Provorov and JVR and Crowley and those guys on expiring deals. They're probably going to look to either keep them as their own rentals, unless somebody blows them out of the water, or maybe add, a depth piece or something to this mix. Like, was it Olivier? I think is a UFA as well, and he was generating trade interest. So they like their group. They're going to hang tight with this group, and they played a strong, sound game, and a game where, in all honesty, they kind of needed some of their younger kids like Fantilli and Del Belbalus to kind of take over to a certain extent and have a game that they kind of dominated in order to kind of spread things out, because Monahan's out. They don't have a couple guys. So this was, from Columbus's side, good to see. From Toronto's side, this is one of those where, again, half the game was fine, and then just everything just kind of fell apart. You forget about that game ASAP and move on to Saturday.
Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button at the Leafs Nation 401. And again, Ray Ferraro is coming up in about 10 minutes from now. But yeah, like, that's the thing that gets me is, like, you look at that Columbus roster, and I think you make the excellent point. They got these eager kids in the lineup, but no Monahan, who's your 1C. Boone Jenner's prototypically your 2C. Like, that's a very watered down roster. And to find a way to come into Toronto, get boosted by the local products, JVR scores, the veteran. It just seems to happen frequently to the Toronto Maple Leafs. And that's why you're like, you look on paper, and I get it. John Tavares is hurt right now. There's some other injuries up front. You got to find a way to muscle through and win that type of game. But all in all, they had their chances. The big boys specifically. Nylander had a couple more breakaways. Surprise, surprise. I thought Matthews was actually the best of the stars on the Maple Leafs in the game. Like, he's feeling good about life, and he's looking good. He's looking fresh. He's looking healthy, which is great to see. And that shot, I mean, he keeps scoring, so I love it.
Yeah, no, look, the big boys are going to be the big boys, but it's not always going to go in, all the time. Like Austin, he had the one, but again, Nylander got stopped a couple times, or stopped once in I think the second breakaway, he hit like the side pad and then it just kicked out.
Yeah.
Merzlikins sold it. Looked like a hell of a save, but whatever. But yeah, look, it didn't happen for him, and that kind of stuff's going to happen. You just kind of, again, you forget about it. You take some of the positives away from it, because again, you played solid in the first half of that game, even though you were down 1-0. Just again, the wheels friggin' fell off after JVR and Fantilli scored his second. So that kind of shit's gonna happen every now and again. Let's see the response. It's kind of like, to a certain extent, I'm going to use the Habs as an example. They were up 3-0. Toronto came back for 7. They got shit pumped in the second part of that game, and then they rebounded the next night and ended up beating the New York Rangers in overtime. And then they came back and beat the Tampa Bay Lightning a couple of days later. So let's see the response from Toronto after this 5-1 loss last night.
Yeah, not to mention there's some rest coming the Maple Leafs way, and they have looked a bit fatigued as of late. They after Saturday's Battle of Ontario, they don't play till Wednesday against Minnesota, and then I think they head out to Edmonton for the Saturday night game, aka Producer Vic's wedding night. So we're gonna be streaming that game at Producer Vic's wedding. But I think that's the silver lining in all this. And I won't lie, I hate games like this, because at that point where it's good night, Irene, you're not winning the game, just escape. No injuries, please. And unfortunately, the Leafs couldn't. Matthew Knies goes down, takes like an awkward hit late in the second period, does not return for the third. This guy's tough as nails. If he's not returning, it tells me like something's legitimately up here. But an upper body injury, I think we're going to find out more today. But like,
Yeah.
Slowly the injuries are starting to pile up again. Like the injury bug is starting to hit this team up front. You got Dewar, you got Pacioretty, you got Nyes. I mean, you look across the roster. My question is like, who the fuck's playing with Matthews and Marner now with all these guys hurt? Is it McMahon? Is it Nick Robertson? Like, wow.
Yeah, they keep bouncing guys around and altering shit.
Yeah.
But this is a good, like, if you want this kind of stuff to happen, this is a good period to do it, because in a couple of weeks there's Four Nations. The guys that aren't playing in it, everybody can kind of breathe a little bit and relax, go hit the beach, get away from everything for like 4 or 5 days, relax, unwind, come back and heal up. So you want this happening now versus April. So good on, like, that's a good, go get away, go relax, take some time off, because it's they don't play till the 22nd,
Yeah.
if memory
Carolina.
serves. Yeah, the only home game in February,
Yeah.
that the Leafs have, which might be a good thing based on last night's crowd.
Yeah, definitely. You're so right. I think maybe stepping away from home, they got their road trip out to Western Canada. That should be fun. Playing Calgary, playing Vancouver, playing the Edmonton Oilers. But I think you make an excellent point that if there is a time for some guys to lick some wounds, it is right now. We really haven't heard much on the Pacioretty front. I would think at some point today we're going to hear more on Matthew Nyes. But again, the fact that he couldn't return, I think, is rather telling. Also, the fact that they play Saturday, they play Wednesday, then Saturday. So 3 games in the next, over a week. I think there's maybe the potential where even like a Jacob Quillen makes his NHL debut, because we just talked about numbers. Like, and I know a lot of you brought it up too, like John Tavares is out. And so far pretty decent without JT in the lineup, 3-1. I'll take that any day of the week and twice on Sunday. But I think, again, like the depth was always a question with these guys healthy. Who the hell is scoring now with some of these guys out, and who's going to play with who? Like, I think there's a lot of question marks coming out of this Nyes injury.
Yeah, and look, I get to a certain extent why he didn't come back in. You're also, I think it was 3, if memory serves, 3-1 at that point, I think. And then, what's the point based on how they're playing, and if you're already accepting defeat in that one, and he needs a little bit of time, why throw him back in there and risk him getting hurt even more, whatever the hell it is. So, we'll find out. At least we'll get a better indication. We may not find out fully, but we'll get a better indication today as to how Nyes is, how he's doing, and hopefully for this team's sake, it's not going to be that bad.
It's funny you say that because I can tell you right now, I've just been told by a pretty credible source, a knee injury for Matthew Nyes considered day-to-day. So day-to-day, I think that's really good news on Matthew Nyes. Day-to-day with a knee injury is what I'm being told.
Yeah, well, that's good news in terms of the timeline right now. Knee, tricky. Mine stopped working a long time ago, so hopefully for him, it's not that bad, but we'll see. Obviously we'll see what happens. They'll the coaching staff, I'm sure Berube is going to mention this at some point later on today with respect to the injury, but what you're hearing day to day for Matthew Nyes, that's not the worst outcome.
Yeah, I think they may have dodged a bullet. Again, if you're just tuning in, hearing a knee issue for Matthew Nyes considered day-to-day. And I think you make a good and astute point, too. Like, that game was well out of hand. And I mean, there's no point in risking, further injury, and especially a horse of yours in Matthew Nyes. But it's unfortunate because it's been a roller coaster season for him, right? Where he's played really, really well, but been banged up, pretty legitimately, like a couple times now, even dating back to the Conky, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and well, when you play with a little bit of extra edge, you're going to get, you're more susceptible to getting hurt in some fashion. And he's obviously the type of player within their top 6 that brings that type of energy on a regular basis. So, again, take this one as a win for now. If it is just day to day, like you were just told, on the knee, maybe he misses a game, maybe 2, but that's not the worst outcome. That's probably a good sign.
The following interview is brought to you by Charm Diamond Centers. Get custom ring building delivered in less than 4 weeks with the Charm Masterpiece program and an unbeatable pricing policy. Charm Diamond Centers is proudly Canadian owned and operated since 1972 with more than 85 locations across the country through Charm. and their sister brands. For more information, go to charmdiamondcenters.com. As we bring in the one and only Ray Ferraro, one of the best mustaches back in the day with Hartford. What's going on, Ray?
That was a long time ago.
Hey, did you see my post yesterday? I had you with the duster.
Yeah, I noticed. If you look at that Whalers team, we had a pretty good collection. There were Joe Quenneville had a good one. Dave Tippett had one. Dave Babbage, maybe All-Star Hall of Fame mustache.
There, yeah.
John Anderson. Like we had some good ones. It was the style. Like you guys were, I don't know, were you guys even born yet? Like, I don't know. Like it was style. Like we thought we were.
Next, but...
Yeah, good point. I can't, You're not that young, Dave. Come on.
Yeah. Thanks, Ray.
I love it. Ray, thank you so much for dropping by. We're just talking about some news that we're hearing on Matthew Knies. Sounds like a knee issue day to day, which again, I think you always fear for the worst when you see somebody leave the lineup the way he did in that game. But the evolution of Matthew Knies has been so amazing. And he's really gelling with the big boys there on the top line too, isn't he?
Well, for sure he is. But I mean, when you draft a guy and he's got this toolbox that Knies has, and he's got the size to go with it, it's hard to be patient because you think that I think those bigger guys get looked at like they can jump in quicker than and compete because of the strength thing and the way that the game is played. Except some guys just can. Like some of the big guys, they take time. Some of the big guys with lots of skill, it doesn't mesh for them early in their career. Yet I look at Matthew Knies. I do a lot of Ranger games, and I know he's different, but Will Cooley is the same. Like these are big, strong guys they get around the ice. They got good hands. They can score. Cooley hasn't had much of a chance, say, to play with the level of player that Knies has, but he's going to be able to do it. And like teams die for these players. Like they can't wait to get them in. And so they've got a complete player in Knies, and now you deal with the injuries, you deal with the youth, maybe you're going to have some ups and downs, but man, that kid can play.
Yeah, without question. And he's going to get a nice little paycheck at the end of this too, because his contract is up. He'll get a nice little raise.
Never hurts.
Nope. Yeah, exactly. What'd you make? Did you see the tilt between Olivier and Reeves last night? And just your thoughts on that one, but also Austin Matthews' comments afterwards, saying that he thought the crowd could have been a little more hyped after that. It hyped the bench up, but it would have been nice to see the crowd getting more involved.
Well, the fight, I mean, like that's a old school heavyweight bout, right? And when I played, like those guys, there would be like one a game or so that the big boys would get at it, and you'd look at it, and the ferocity of the fight is incredible to watch when you're in the building. Like those guys, when at their size, at their weight, when they hit, man, they hit. And as for I utmost respect for, like, I can't even imagine being able to stand in there to take and give. And we had a tough guy in LA, Matt Johnson, and Moose was an amazing guy. And he tells me one time that, he had to take a couple to get into position. I'm like, take a couple what? And he's like, no, you gotta take one to kind of get your, and I was like, that's a world like most of us have no idea about. Right. And so as for the building, I mean, like, isn't that kind of that kind of been the thing there for kind of, I'll say forever, but for a long time? It's like the people that would be most enthused about something like that, they're not there. They're not, so they're certainly not sitting in the lower bowl. That's for sure. And that's just the way it is. I mean, I totally get it. Like I saw, I had the game on delay. I was a little late getting to it. And when I got there, it was the end of the fight. I'd kind of fast forwarded through when they were out of gas, and people were saying, oh, what a heavyweight tilt. And I didn't see it as that. And then I rewound it and I was like, oh my God. Like, of course, the energy on the ice is really quite incredible.
Was going to ask you, I want to lean on you as a former player. Was that just your prototypical classic trap game, or do you think there were deeper issues?
Okay, so you guys in Toronto or in Montreal or in Boston, everything's in a vacuum, right? Like these are the games you see over and over and over, or the team you see over and over. So when things are good, it's amazing. When it's lousy, like last night, could it be more? I'm telling you, this is the same everywhere. One of the great things I get, I just love it of my job, is that I see all these different teams. I've done games with, I think, 22 teams so far this year. And so I get to see ups and downs all over the place. And so to answer, Nick, is like, it's one night. It's could be a trap game, sure. But like some nights you just don't have it. And they could have had a couple early. Maybe that changes the context of the game. But every team goes through a night where you're like, that was terrible. And there's so many games, it's impossible. Like the biggest fallacy is listening to coaches and players say, we need to play a 60-minute game. We need to be consistent night to night. There's no way to do it. The other teams are allowed to try. So like if you play a complete game, you might have control of it for 35 minutes and 15 minutes might be dead flat. Like, and even nothing happening. In 10 minutes, they might get. But if you impose your will longer, that's a controlled game. The consistency night to night is just, it's an impossibility with 80 games, right? You're going to have nights that just suck. And I guess that's the result they got last night.
Yeah, that wasn't a top-notch performance.
No.
Overall. They weren't completely out of it, but once those two goals back-to-back happened between JVR and Fantilli second, it was just, they looked defeated.
Yeah, finished. It was, and that those are the nights like maybe you just don't have it to dig back. Right? Like, so LA's had an amazing season. 2 home games ago, they get pancaked. It's 5-1. They look terrible. And then last night they beat Florida. And so like, it's the same team. It's the same guys. It's just 2 days later. And I think that's the ups and downs of the long season.
Wanted to ask you as well, Ray, about Morgan Rielly. Again, it was a tough outing for him. Do you think this is just classic Toronto? Because it just seems like every year this market needs like a whipping boy on the blue line. Or do you think the Maple Leafs have a Morgan Rielly problem right now?
I would say expectation creates a problem for anybody. When somebody else expects something from you, and if you don't deliver it to the level that they're expecting, I'm not even talking just in sport, but if you don't deliver to the expectation that they have, then there's going to be angst, right? Also, when a player's in the same place for a long period of time, I think it's more common to see what the player isn't as opposed to what he is. And so I think there's a hope and an expectation that Rielly can play to that. What did he have in that big year? He had like 50 assists or something, right? And, and I just don't think that's what Morgan is. I think at the expectation that the team or the fans, maybe the team, I don't know, that they would like from him. I just don't know that he's a producer at that level. He's never had a great shot. So on the power play, that's a weapon that the Leafs don't have. So I think that sometimes leads them into trying to pass the puck into the net, as opposed to, as skilled as the Oilers are, every so often it goes back to Bouchard and he just hammers one. And whether it hits the net or hits the boards, now everybody's got to react. And I think part of that is the angst, I'll use again, about Rielly, is that he cannot create in the way that maybe some people wish he could.
Yeah. He's had 2 50-plus assist seasons in his career, and those are the only 2 seasons where he actually had double digits in goals as well. 20 the one season, and then 10 the rest of them.
Well, okay, Dave, that's a really good set of stats, because most of us look at the high water mark and think that should be the regular. When there's a reason players have career years. I scored 40 goals twice. I was not a 40 goal scorer, but I did it twice.
Right.
If you expected 27 goals from me, you were probably pretty happy. If you were looking for 40, there were 16 years you weren't very happy. And so I think that's the same for Morgan. He had those 2 huge years. And I don't think that's, certainly at this stage of his career, I just don't think that's what he is. And he's a good player, but if you're not going to produce at that level, then everything else has to become more and more airtight. And I think that's where maybe the frustration comes from fans watching them.
Yeah.
Dave?
Looking at the group, and last night, notwithstanding,
Right.
about that, but if there's an area or two that you think they should improve on, looking up and down this roster, is there one that comes out at you more than another?
Well, I mean, the second center has been or
Right.
third center rather, that center position, but like depending on how you want to rank people. But I mean, that's an area of need, perhaps. I do think they're in a position, when I look around the league, like how many teams are certainly in the East are better than them, like that you can say clearly are better than them. This is not a year to keep, like, to wait. I think in the past,
Right.
they have spent extensively with future capital, like with draft picks and maybe young players that it didn't work out. And some of them, it looked like a reach at that time even, right? Like you're like, geez, that's an expensive bet on a team that's kind of in the middle of it. This year, they're near the top of it in the East. And so you can always use another defenseman. You always can. You can always use another forward. If there's a strong centerman to be had, like a physically strong guy, I think that stands out a little bit for me, because you're going to get into a series where you're going to need it. It's going to be a slog through the mud, and you're going to need it. And it's a reason somebody like Sam Bennett is a good playoff player. And maybe he's not an 80-game producer for you, but you get into those 7 games in 13 days against the same player, because it's not just the same team, right? Like, you got to remember, when you're in a playoff series, the matches generally are head to head for 2 weeks. Yeah. And if you're playing a guy that's a miserable SOB, then that's a long 2 weeks. And I do think in the style that they're trying to play, something like that is a bid. Where do you find them? Like, teams aren't giving you that, right? Like I do. And Dave, you do this more so like all the time, but like when people say, oh, they got to do something, and yeah, sure, they got to do something, but somebody's got to be willing to trade with you. Like, I live out in Vancouver.
Exactly.
If I hear one more time, they have to get something done. I think they're aware of that. However, the other side needs to be involved too, right? Like, you can't make a trade if the other team says, I'll give you a bag of peanuts, or if they're like, we're not ready for it right now. We're going to wait and see. Like, I do feel like teams would like to get settled early. I don't know what you're hearing, but that 4 Nations break to me seems like the first trade deadline.
Yep.
That teams would love to get their guy or guys in advance of the break, so the player can get in and get sort of assimilated into a new city and get his family in there and try and figure out which way is north. Never mind the hockey, but like just try to get their life settled. And then, of course, the real deadline's 3 weeks later.
Yeah, it's such a rare time because you've got that break. So if you're not in 4 Nations, you've got time to get acclimated to, your new situation, which is talking to people around the league and managers and whatnot. Like that's what they're viewing. I think that those 10 days leading up to that break is going to be interesting.
A lot of people waiting, right? Like, we're kind of in that mode now where the games are the games and they're all important, but everybody's kind of like got their fingernails on trying to grab on to something. Like, is there a deal to be made? Is it this week? Is it next week? What's our team doing? And it's outside of the players living the stress of it. It's an interesting time of year to follow.
Boys, I mean, the problem with this is that every team thinks they still have a shot. The 3-point league, you
Sure.
got 17 teams in the
Yeah.
mix. Like if you're talking sellers right now, Chicago, San Jose, the Buffalo Sabres, because that's their role every season. So that's my wonder with the trade market. But Ray, I wanted to ask you about Mitch Marner, on pace for a career year, and we could tie this into the tournament you just talked about, the Four Nations. Does it matter at all? I'm just from an outsider's perspective, the output, what Mitch Marner does in that tournament for sort of, how people view the player right now.
No, I don't think so. It's almost like if and I'll compare it to like at the draft. So all these rankings come out, and some kid has a fabulous or lousy World Junior tournament. So
Right.
how can those 5 or 7 games tell you everything or change your complete view of a player if you've watched him 75 times?
Yeah, it's a good point.
I think we're going to get Ray back in a second here to finish
Yeah.
that point. I think we got you back, Ray? Not yet. Not yet? No, we don't have you back yet. Sorry, Ray. We'll try to get Ray back on the line here to break down Mitch Marner, obviously the Four Nations and that moving forward. But that
Oh.
conversation will be very, very
am I back? Sorry,
Yeah,
am
we
I
got you
now?
back, Ray.
You're good.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
my Cammy called, so
All good. Go ahead.
and so I don't know if I should just let the call
Are you-
ring or hang up. So I hung up, and apparently that hangs everything up. So
Oh,
technology escaping me again. Shocker.
You're
So
gonna be in
I was-
trouble now if you're not taking
Oh
it.
yeah, yeah, and that door may open pretty soon. So
Yeah.
the thing with Marner, and I was comparing it to the junior kids. Look, he's had a fabulous year. He's one of the great creators in the game, and if he goes to the Four Nations and stinks, I don't see how that matters to any of the other teams. It wouldn't matter to me if I had a number that I could sign Mitch Marner to, and he's minus 12 in the tournament. I don't care. I'm like, I want the creator. I'm not worried about a weak tournament, mainly because the guys he's playing with, he's not going to be playing with anyway.
Yeah.
Fair enough. And Ray, you could be in the doghouse after this interview. Don't blame it on us, okay?
Is that for the Toronto stuff or home?
No, for your
home,
wife.
Oh no,
I think home front.
I've done way worse stupid things than that. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I can tell you that.
Thank you so much for your time today. I know you got a busy slate. Appreciate it.
Awesome. You guys have a great day. Good to see you.
You as well.
Great
Ray
interview.
Ferraro, just excellent stuff. For my money, the best analyst right now in the NHL, just breaking it down and
Oh, yeah.
variety of different topics. But that's a polarizing one for me, man. I wonder about the noise. If Marner goes to that Four Nations, he's going to play, with the likes of McDavid and McKinnon and the big boys, and he can't do his thing. Toronto, this market, right, Dave?
That's exactly what I was going to say. In this
Yeah.
market, it's going to get magnified, like just so
Yeah.
like unnecessary amounts, and everyone's going to go. And I already know the chirps. It's going to be. This was like a playoff atmosphere. This is what Mitch does in the playoffs. Blah 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 blah. Can't wait for the playoffs for him to not show up, and everyone's going to chirp him for the rest of the season if he has a shit world champ. Sorry, Four Nations, whatever this friggin' thing is. So, by the way, get your tickets because there are a lot available if you want to go.
There you go.
But yeah, if Mitch doesn't do well, or if any of these guys that don't produce at a clip in which they're expected to, then yeah, they'll get chirped. But in this city, based on how the Leafs are playing and the history of the player, I think it would be that much worse. Now, I'm not anticipating him, just laying an egg in this tournament. I think everybody's going to be a little extra motivated, even if it is this, randomly concocted event. I just think I've talked to a few of the guys on Canada and the U.S. And Sweden, and they're all like, yeah, we want to kick the crap out of all of these guys because we play them on a regular basis. It's just now we're doing it for our country.
Should be good. I think it'll take one check that is a bit heavier than you would expect, and that tournament's going to get cooking in a big way, and looking forward to that in a couple weeks' time. KPG writing in, Ferraro is getting beaten with a frying pan. That's a tough look when you hit decline on the wife. I wouldn't know that. But like when you hit decline and a loved one will say that you're going to get some heat back from that one. But we appreciate it, man. Ray's one of my favorites.
He's amazing. He's one of the best. I had the privilege, honor, I guess, of knowing him for years now, and 10 plus 15,
Yeah.
almost 15 years. Just an awesome dude. And he calls the game just so perfectly and so honestly too. Like he's not afraid to throw some stuff out there if he needs to.
So free. That's what I love about him. Just his breakdowns are really, really good. So very appreciative of Ray Ferraro dropping by today's podcast. Again, if you're just tuning in, Matthew Knies, as we reported about 20 minutes ago, day-to-day with a knee injury. So that's actually a positive development. I'm told it's not serious. So considering the way he left that game, didn't come back, I think they avoided something pretty bad here, all in all, Dave.
Yeah, I mean, we got some other injuries across the board in the National Hockey League. I mean, the Islanders suck, so it's not going to affect them much. But Noah Dobson's week to week with a lower body, and William Karlsson, lower body out in Vegas. He's done for several weeks. He's out.
Four Nations too. Well.
Yeah. So, and that's going to affect. Yeah, that's going to affect the tournament there. So, they'll need to call in the reinforcements on Sweden to get him or to get his position eaten up. But like this. To see those types of injuries happen and then to go, okay, well, it's a knee problem that could go in a variety of different directions, but it's only day to day. That's a good sign. Now, I'm trusting your sources more than the Leafs actually putting out right now what the injury is, because every time they've put out, certain ones, it's been, Austin's day to day, then he's out for 7 months, and then it's Stolarz is, he'll be back soon, and then, he's gone for several weeks, but I don't think that's the case. It doesn't look like it. You've got a good handle on things over there with this stuff. That's a good sign if it ends up being day to day. And again, you miss a game, you miss two, whatever. Who gives a shit? Honestly, if you are any bit concerned, pull them out of Saturday's game because your next one is until Wednesday anyway. So you basically have a full week almost, 6 days, let's say 5-6 days, because you got to get back on the ice. And I'm assuming he'll still be on the ice. But it gives you a good stretch to heal up.
Definitely. And I know there's been a bit of a back and forth with some people on social media. I put out the tweet saying last night they said he left the game with an upper body injury, but I've been told definitively it is a lower body injury. I guess we can phrase it. But regardless, it doesn't sound serious. Okay. So if people are bitching and complaining about the phrasing, that is the latest on Matthew Knies. And again,
people are complaining on social media.
Yeah, I know. Surprise.
Shit.
I know. But I'm sure we'll find out later today, again, concretely from the Maple Leafs. But that's what we're hearing. And as Dave talked about, pretty decent source, I would say, on the Matthew Knies front. So again, looks like the Leafs dodged a bullet. We'll see if we see him on Saturday. If not, then maybe Wednesday against the Minnesota Wild. It's time for the last call, brought to you by Bet365. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code NATION, all in uppercase today. No Leafs action. I'm going to look to the team the Leafs played on Saturday, Dave. The Montreal Canadiens at plus money on the road against Detroit. I'm going to take the Habs in that game, and I will take the over, I think, 5.5.
I'm liking. I got two on the docket for me. I got two that I'm zeroing in on: Boston and Ottawa. I think the Sens are going to come out 2 points in this one. I'm just going to take them on the money line in it, and I'm going to take the over in that one as well. I think Boston's in a lot of trouble, and Ottawa's even without Linus Ullmark. I'm liking their positioning. And then how can you not look at Vancouver, Edmonton after the little suspension BS that happened and all the crying? You put out a statement because the guy got suspended. Like Vancouver's eating this one up. They can't wait to come out, at least the fan base is, and pull something out of their what's in this one. So I'm going over in this game, and I think I'm going Vancouver for a little revenge.
You're expecting chaos. I like that, and I can't believe you're
chaos.
sleeping on the Yaroslav Askarov revenge game, the return home and home here in Nashville, San Jose, where I think Nashville's going to be out for it. I don't know what the hell that was the other night. It was 5-1 for San Jose. By the way, Nashville minus, I think, 425 favorites on the money line going into that game. Then they build up a 5-1 lead only to blow it. So the Preds win that game, but it was your guy, Alexander Georgiev, and not Yaroslav Askarov, the revenge start potential here against Nashville. So looking at that, Dave, excellent job tonight. Jay Rosehill back in the mix tomorrow. We're going to break down another installment of the Battle of Ontario as we get closer and closer to the Four Nations. Just waiting every day for an announcement on Yanni Hakanpää, by the way. They got 6 games left, and this guy's played twice in the last 311 days, but he's playing in the Four Nations, best on best. It just doesn't seem like a smart idea. I don't know. Maybe I'm stupid, though.
Allegedly playing. I mean, if I'm the Leafs and the guy doesn't get into action here soon, I'm going, buddy, you're not going. It's going to be pretty simple. We're paying you all this money to sit down. You're not going to the freaking tournament. Like, that's my message. It's plain and simple.
Yeah, me too. But we'll track that over the next couple of days. And you talked about William Karlsson going down. Maybe this is an opening for Pontus Holmberg, but probably not. Probably not.
He's
a 2C,
Dave.
Dave.
On that one.
He's a second line center. Okay, cut him some slack. Anyways, thank you to everybody in the chat.
Good boy.
Fantastic stuff as per usual at the Leafs Nation 401 here on YouTube. Make sure on your way out, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, Leafs Morning Take wherever you find your podcast. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review. And don't forget to visit theleafsnation.com. Thank you to Ray Ferraro and thank you to Dave. We'll talk soon. Okay, Dave?
Sounds good. Later.
Thank you to producer Vic. For Dave Pagnotta, I'm Nick Alberga. Talk on Friday. Take care. Make sure to check out more of our content right here on the Leafs Nation YouTube page. We got long form interviews, we got clips, we got epic rants by Jay Rosehill. We simply have it all. And don't forget, you can find out much more at theleafsnation.com. Thanks so much for watching.